Hi.
Hi. Welcome to our kitchen island. Today we're making
Pizza dough.
That's right, we're making pizza dough for our pizza. So let's get started. Let's add, we've got here about a quarter cup of water and a package of active yeast. Gonna mix that in there. Gonna add about a teaspoon of honey and get that started. Meanwhile, we've got our processor over here. We're gonna add in our teaspoon of salt. I use spelt flour, which means that it's not quite as absorbent as all-purpose white flour. So I was going to use about 2 cups of all-purpose white flour, but I've got about 2.5 cups of spelt flour. We'll put that in there. And then we've got about 2/3 of a cup of water. A little bit less, maybe about half a cup of water. And we'll add that in there, along with 1 tablespoon of olive oil. And we've got our dough hook on our processor, and we'll get that blended until it's into a ball. Cover your ears, Benny. Okay, we've got our dough mixing up here, and now we're going to add our mixture of yeast and water. Usually when I'm using the food processor, it's a lot noisier, but today we're just making dough today, Benny, so you don't have to cover your ears anymore. So that's forming a nice ball. If it's too muggy, add some more flour. We'll let that beat up for a little bit, and then we'll take it out and roll it out on the counter. Okay, our dough has formed a nice ball in our blender, as you can see. So we're just going to flour our counter, and then we're going to pull the dough out and knead it for a couple minutes.
Counter. I'm becoming royal.
Just going to get kneading. Make sure your hands are clean. You got a nice clean counter. And just for a couple minutes, just knead the dough. This will help to get the yeast nice and active. If your dough is too moist, add a little bit more flour. You don't want it sticking. And if it's falling apart, just add a little bit more water. Get a little bit moist, but our dough looks quite good right now. So we're just going to get that kneaded for a couple minutes. And then we're going to put it into a bowl with a damp cloth over top and let that rise for a couple of hours. Okay, today on our pizza we're just going to put together the sauce. We're just going to make a basic tomato sauce. We don't want any too strong flavors in the tomato sauce. So we're just going to chop up our tomatoes. I got about 5 medium-sized tomatoes here that we're going to use. And then we're going to get some parsley going. Chop that up. But I'd say probably half a cup of parsley chopped up. You can add onions and garlic if you really like them to this, but I like the flavors to all work together and nothing to stand out too much when I'm making my pizza. So we'll get our parsley roughly chopped up there. And then we'll move over to the oven to get the going on the sauce. Alright, back to the stove. We're going to get going on the sauce. Let's get a couple tablespoons of oil in the pan. We just got the pan on a high heat to start. Don't need to heat it up too much because we're not sauteing anything down. So we're just going to add in our tomatoes into the olive oil. And we're going to add in our parsley. Got a nice bunch of fresh parsley. Also at this time, we're going to add in a little dried oregano.
Scoop it out.
You want to scoop it out? Okay, here, put that on your spoon. Alright, put it on there carefully. Good job. Then we're going to add about a teaspoon and a half of salt. Okay, Ben, keep your hands away. And a few spins of pepper. Just going to get that stirred up. And we're going to let that cook down so that we get a nice tomato sauce, cook a lot of the juices away and intensify all the flavors. And that should be ready in about 20 minutes, give or take. Keep it on about a high, medium-high heat. You don't want to burn anything, but you do want to cook down all the tomato. Okay, we've got our tomato sauce cooking on the back there. It's been on there for about 10-15 minutes. We just turn it down to low heat right now because we're almost ready. We're going to put bacon on this pizza as well. I like to cook my bacon in the oven because it fits a lot better on a cookie tray than anything else. We've got the oven heated up to about 400 degrees. We're just going to put that in there. That'll take about 5-10 minutes. Just keep an eye on it, but it's not a big deal. All right, we're going to get going on our chicken too. So key things to remember when you're putting chicken on pizza. There's a lot of flavor on pizza, so the last thing you want is a flavorless piece of chicken. So let's get that into a hot pan. We've got 2 pieces, couple pieces of small chicken breast diced up. I'm going to turn that down a bit so it doesn't burn. We're going to add some salt, put a teaspoon of salt. We're going to throw some pepper on there. And we're going to add a little Worcester once we get it all browned off a little bit. So you want to have a fairly hot pan because you want to sear in all the sides so you don't lose a lot of the juice. And key to remember is when you're cooking the chicken, don't cook it all the way through because you're actually going to be putting it in the oven for about 10 minutes at 500 later on. So you're going to cook it a lot more at that point. So then you're going to have some pretty dry chicken by the time you're done. Just get that sauteed around. Add a little Worcester to that. And I've got a pretty small dice on the chicken here, so I've got about 1/2 by 1/2 inch cubes. I'm just going to let that go for about another 30 seconds to a minute. Okay, last but certainly not least, we're going to put some mushrooms on this pizza. And like the chicken, last thing we want is our mushrooms to be flavorless. So we're just going to put some butter in our pan and get that melted. We'll get that butter melted there, and then we're going to add our mushrooms to it. And we're going to cook down the mushrooms so that we get rid of a lot of that water that the mushrooms pick up. So we've just got a handful, about 10 mixture of white button mushrooms and cremini mushrooms. Put a little salt with them, get a little pepper, and I'm just going to trade burners here so that we can get these guys cooking a little bit more. So you just let your mushrooms cook down and saute in the butter for about 10 minutes until all the liquid reduces out of them, and you're good to go.